It's well known and well documented that throughout most of human history, and indeed even more so the case prehistory, human beings have been largely polygynous, meaning one man, many women, or in some cases, one man, many wives. Monogamy as such has been a thing for quite some time, and it coexisted alongside these other arrangements, but up until comparatively recently, monogamy was less of a thing. And even there, inasmuch as monogamy is a thing, it has been much more confined to certain types of cultures, civilizations, societies than others. So you probably know that human beings exist on a spectrum. We are neither fully monogamous, nor are we fully polygamous. In fact, we are somewhere in between. We are the ape that is in between when it comes to many things. If you look at our morphology in terms of our body, etc., you'll see we're somewhere between many other apes. And inasmuch as human beings do practice monogamy, it's typically serial monogamy, basically a stint. You might be familiar with the term the 7-year itch. Well, very rare is it that we, in a natural way, practice lifetime or lifelong monogamy. So you're probably also familiar with the stat that these days, at least in the context of the United States, something like twice as many women have relationships as men, and that's an interesting stat in as much as it tells you a whole lot. Because you might be thinking, well, roughly speaking, you have a 50-50 ratio of men to women. It's not perfectly aligned, but it's basically 50-50. So how is it that twice as many women have relationships with men? Well, the only logical conclusion you can draw from that is that these women are in what you might call situationships, pseudo-relationships, some kind of arrangement that isn't necessarily an officially declared relationship, or it could be an officially declared relationship, but they are sharing the top men that they want. We might want to refer to this as the Tinder principle. The top 10, 20% of guys and the bottom 80 or 90% of guys get basically nothing, at best the scraps. So whether these are tacit agreements in terms of several women dating the same guy, being in a relationship with the same guy, or it's officially declared, I'm not sure that matters a whole lot. Because it's always important to drive this point home. Human beings change very slowly. The nature of an animal, the nature of a human being changes very slowly. Technological developments, cultural developments can vastly outstrip our ability to evolve along with these things, which is what we've borne witness to, particularly in recent decades. But the fact that this is happening indicates an interesting twist in the future. Now, officially, polygamy as such is illegal, and we've seen the U.S. government, for example, crack down on Mormons who are engaging in bigamy and this sort of thing. But those were different times. And I think there's another element here, that Mormons are not a particularly popular or endorsed culture. But I want you to bear in mind this idea in the current year that a lot of things go. A lot of things these days are acceptable that even 10 years ago you would have thought would be insane, or you wouldn't have believed even existed. I mean, these days, if you declare yourself to be, you can be literally a quadrisexual werebeaver, if that's what you want to be. And nobody bats an eyelash at that sort of thing, and wokeism or extreme left-wing politics has penetrated basically every layer and every facet of human society, be it the government, universities, schools, popular culture, everything. So you can't really avoid it. Now, going back to the polygamy thing, we know that women in general are unwilling to, quote-unquote, settle for something they believe is beneath them. They are, by their very nature, pickier. There are good evolved reasons for this, pregnancy, etc., etc. The reasons only matter as much as you want to explain the phenomenon. The phenomenon itself remains, regardless of the reasons. And so, broadly speaking, women are faced with two choices going forward. They can stay alone, or increasingly, they can accept one of these arrangements whereby they share one guy with other women. And I think at the very least, going forward, we are going to see a kind of soft acceptance of what in former times, not too long ago at all, maybe a decade or two ago, was heavily frowned upon, namely full-on polygamous relationships. We've already seen this with the talk of polyamory, which is kind of another version of it, although it's unusual in as much as a lot of the polyamory is led by women, in contrast to more traditional polygamous or polygynous arrangements, but it's still a sign of the times. And given the trends we can observe, I would also say, as odd as it might seem, that it really would not surprise me one iota if the U.S. government at some point in time in the next decade or two decided to rubber stamp, officially, polygamous marriages, because that might be one of the few forms of marriage that will, quote-unquote, work for many women. Now, as I've said a few times in the past, this probably won't affect the best of the best in society. The wealthiest, the most educated, they will continue with their preference falsification and their luxury beliefs, preaching one thing and doing another thing, meaning they will have more traditional marriages with lower rates of divorce, two-parent households, producing healthy offspring. So I think inasmuch as this becomes a thing, the widespread acceptance of polygamous attitudes, I think that you will have, as is often the case, other facets of the culture that don't go along with it. The polygamous thing, I think, will be much more a feature relegated to the middle and the lower classes, just because that's how things are shaking out to begin with right now. The haves are having a lot more, and the have-nots are having a lot less. And so you might end up seeing a complete dichotomization of how society works, where, again, elites, the hyper-intelligent, well-educated, wealthy, have normalized functional marriages, functional children, and the others, the have-nots, don't. And you already see this on the ground, as well as multiple instances of foreshadowing of this phenomenon. Women with kids by multiple men, phenomena that are interconnected to this. And as I said, I don't think it's completely unreasonable that the government could rubber stamp this and just say this is the way it is, if you want it, right? Because increasingly we're living in an anything goes society. Now, anything goes, of course, does not necessarily tell us what is the best for human beings. There are certain human arrangements that work better than others, that make people feel better than others, that produce healthier societies. We have good evidence from the past that highly polygynous societies do not produce healthy outcomes for civilization. But what happens long term, of course, when you have an anything goes in a world where technically in terms of healthy outcomes or even good outcomes, only a few things go, is reality eventually rears its ugly head. But the real problem is, yes, reality eventually rears its ugly head, but it can take a very, very long time. And so if you're watching this, my lifetime, your lifetime, we're almost certainly not going to see an improvement to all these phenomena I've mentioned here and elsewhere in other videos. If anything, it's going to get worse and worse. So buckle up and get ready for a bumpy ride. That's all I can say. Anyway, as always, thank you very much indeed for tuning in. Many special thanks to my patrons on Patreon. You guys are the best. You keep the channel going. Without you, the channel would not exist. And for everyone else, if you can leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, leave a comment, blah, 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 all that YouTube jazz, be much appreciated. I've heard it helps with the algorithm. Somehow I doubt it in my case. And if I'm still alive, I'll check you out next time. Until then, may the gods watch over you. Bye-bye for now. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.